Hopefully, can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. We can see that.
Okay, thank you very much. And apologies that as I said, I've been traveling with the family, so it's been very busy. Okay. I'd like to, as you see through my presentation, I'll just, okay. Okay, is that better? Can you see the full screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for taking the time to come and listen to me talk regarding the association between school-based physical activity and academic performance, the Brain Boost. As was mentioned, my name's Guy Cassarchis, and I've currently been travelling back home from Nigeria to Australia, and therefore in the midst of just returning home to do the presentation as well. This is a little bit about me and my background, just so that you get a bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from. I've been in schools for 35 years in a wide variety of positions, but I initially started as a health and physical education and sport teacher many years ago. They're just some of my qualifications. I also, currently being a principal CEO, I also do keynote speaking around the world and also around Nigeria and Southeast Asia on education. I thought I'd start with this slide. Obviously, being an Australian, but also many of our Western countries, the report cards, I guess, on children, secondary children in particular, is quite low in regards to physical activity, and that's because they spend a lot of their time at school on a daily basis seated. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey in the next 20 to 25 minutes through this presentation. There's obviously been a lot of research in regards to physical activity and academic performance as well, and I'll share some of that research that I found with you, but I'd like to give you some ideas in regards to what we do at my school, but also in a number of schools around the world in trying to keep children active, and the comparison in regards to the data for their students' academic performance. So what really is the issue for schools, generally speaking, all around the world? There's an increased interest in people researching this particular topic around the world, and you'll see that through some of the information I have and the evidence. You'll see there's so many different pieces of research going on around the world. The other thing is that they're generally trying to look at how physical activity has a positive impact on children, and the increase in their participation is supposed to enhance their cognitive functioning and concentration and skills, etc. But the main bullet point I'd like to mention is number 4. It's called the crowded curriculum. Now, as parents and also as teachers and educators, the current curriculum is crowded with a variety of subject areas. So how does physical education and sport and extracurricular activity fit into this crowded curriculum is what I'll also be talking about today. The other thing is that because there are so many different subject areas that keep cropping up every single year, getting introduced into schools, physical activity, or PE, tends to be, the time that they're getting tends to be diminishing. I'm not sure what it's like in your schools or your children's schools, but it's something that should be looked at, as you'll see from some of the information I'll be presenting. And then the other issue is that there is also research around saying that physical activity doesn't actually impact on the grades at all. So that's the flip side of what I'm talking about. And then there's also information in regards to the difference between physical activity and organised sport. So some of the questions that have been raised are how many lessons are allocated to physical activity across your curriculum? The one thing that we've looked at the school I'm at is looking at the structure of the school day, the traditional school day, and trying to break that up to create far more interesting lessons, where I'll be talking about active learning, and also the structure of the day so the children aren't seated for such a long period of time. The other thing we'll be looking at is movement opportunities during the school day. How do teachers, or how can teachers plan lessons that are a little bit more interesting and have more variety, and therefore children are actually a bit more active in the actual classroom? I'll show you some sample classrooms, and so the environment of a classroom has a very, very big impact on how children learn. We'll be looking at teacher training, and once again, as I mentioned, what's the difference between physical education and sport? So here is some evidence. The evidence that I'll show you in regards to activity or physical activity definitely has an impact on improving people's grades. Now, I won't read everything to you because it's only a short period of time. But basically, it's saying through a number of slides that I'll show you that physical activity and the studies done around the world are all indicating that as long as the children are active, and as it says there, the formula is at least 60 minutes a day, that will increase a child's performance. Now, some of the studies actually relate to if children are physically active, their mathematics results will go up, their English results go up. So there are significant studies that show that as well. And the studies have been done over a period of time. As bullet point 3 says, it was a 2-year program there. Some of the positive links in regards to this is that there's also showed that in secondary schools, there tends to be a dropout of young girls participating in physical activity, especially when they get to year 10, 11 and 12. So the older the girls are getting, those later years of secondary school, there seems to be less girls participating, not such a significant drop in boys. Okay, once again, they talk about aerobic exercise. So aerobic is looking at the cardiovascular, so the heart and lungs, compared to the anaerobic. So it does suggest that aerobic exercise is good for all people. Okay, and then the last one, the exercise boosts your memory and thinking indirectly, etc. So as I said, there'll be a number of slides that will provide this evidence as well. Some more research. So what I've done here is I've just put in the boxes a significant number of different forms of research that have gone on for different areas of physical activity, just to show you that when I start giving you some examples of what you can do or what a school can do to enhance physical activity, there is a number of research and researchers that have gone on from individuals and universities all around the world. And it's been going back to 2008, right up to the last couple of years and happening at the moment. So as I said, there's a lot of research that supports the evidence of physical activity being important for children. Here's some more here. Active kids learn better. Once again, another set of research that has gone on. Okay. Sorry if I'm moving quickly. I just wanted to show you that there is a number of research that has gone on around the world. And they're all looking at different types of areas. One I did find interesting was this slide here, the first one in red. This particular piece of research looked at low-income families compared to the higher income families. And once again, it also showed that there was in this particular piece of research, that there needed to be an improvement in the area of lower socioeconomic environments. So governments and also schools, local communities had to support families in the lower socioeconomic brackets because of the financial implications of participating in structured sport programs. Because unfortunately, all of these also cost money outside of school, but some of them also within school, as schools also travel and have different types of competitions that they participate in. And families need to support their children to be able to participate. Okay, here's another study as well. Okay, looking at the improvement in grade point average. So as I said, everything that I'm showing you so far is to just provide you with some proof that it is important to keep children active, and the more active that they are at school and outside of school, it tends to assist them with their academic grades. Now, whilst you're looking at these slides, I will also inform you that being an Australian, I'm also a level 4 athletics coach. I have coached athletics and swimming at elite level, and my student athletes who have been students at school, predominantly in year 9, 10, 11 and 12, have gone on to represent the country at the Youth Olympics, Commonwealth Games and also the Olympic Games. Whilst teaching these students and coaching them at school, they all had a lot of self-discipline to be able to fulfill the requirements, the academic requirements, and therefore they all achieved very, very high results to get into universities in Australia and also overseas, and then to also receive scholarships from many, many different universities in different countries. So I've also had first-hand experience in regards to working with student athletes and seeing them blossom with their academic performance. Some benefits of physical activity. Okay, I don't think we can, anyone can say that it's not good to be physically active. So once again, it's very good for your physical and mental health, your personal well-being. Sport too, remember, doesn't have to be structured. It can just be, for young children, it can be play. It doesn't have to have rules and regulations. Children spend time sitting at school, doing homework and reading, and it's important to strike a balance. The reason that particular point is there is because children in secondary school tend to have, say, 6 periods a day of at least 1 hour duration. So they're sitting for 6 hours. When they come home and mum and dad gets them to do homework, they're seated. Possibly they'll have some TV time or computer time. They're usually seated. So when you look at the amount of hours a child is awake from the morning to when they go to bed, predominantly they are sedentary or seated to complete different tasks and even to relax. So once again, we as parents and as schools need to try and come up with different strategies to try and break that sedentary or that sitting routine, hence the importance of activity. Obviously, the last bullet point, the more you mix up your activities, you're looking at the entire body in regards to improving its physical ability. There was some research here from Active Living. So this particular group suggested that when you're physically active at school, you've got a 20% more likelihood to earn an A grade in English. So their study was predominantly in that particular area. Test scores, they saw increased by 6% over 3 years. And in regards to just one physically active lesson a week, 13%, and 21% decrease in teacher time managing behaviour. So the students who are physically active tend to have greater self-discipline, and therefore that allows the teacher to spend more time actually teaching because the children are there learning. As I said, schools play a very, very important role in the life of a child due to the fact that they spend many, many weeks at school, usually about 40 weeks out of the 52, and most of their day is spent at school, and then when they get home doing school work. So schools and the school environment has a very big impact. Now, in many, many countries, physical education, or what we call in Australia, personal development, health and PE, which is PDHPE, is compulsory or mandatory from kindergarten to year 10. And then in the senior years, year 11 and 12, the years that they study for university, it is an elective. So let's just have a look here at the kindergarten to year 6. So very, very basic curriculum explores these particular areas. So primary school children are usually fairly active and they've got a lot of energy to burn. And I have a little boy, Cooper, who's 4, and I have a little daughter, Sienna, who is 3. Both children very active all day, every day, from when they wake up to when they go to sleep. So there's got a lot of energy that they need to burn. And therefore, health and physical education is very, very important in the curriculum. The health component is looking at the healthy lifestyle, looking after themselves, their personal well-being, and obviously the physical education is the active role. Now, this is the interesting area when it comes to the year 7 to 10, which is also mandatory in many countries around the world. These are some of the areas that the students explore, but in this particular age group is where the teachers predominantly have problems with keeping children active. And it's also one of the big areas that teachers have issues in subjects right across the curriculum with children's behaviour, interest in learning, etc. So this is an example of a school that I used to teach at, a manual school in Sydney. Now, they had a program called Cool Runnings for year 7 to 10. It was a unit of work. Now, its aim was basically to improve fitness, provide an opportunity to be active, and for children to become aware of their surroundings so that they could have a look at things that could possibly make them active in the areas where they live, their local communities. Things that we did in this particular program for our year 7, 8, 9, and 10 students, remembering it was in Sydney, very close to Bondi Beach. We used to jog to the beach from school. On our jog down to school, down to the beach side, we used to stop at that Tamarama Surf Lifesaving Club, which is that picture on the right-hand side. We used to sometimes do meditation or some sort of mindfulness program. Sometimes it was yoga, and we created brain breaks. And then we would continue jogging from Tamarama down to Bondi Beach. Once we went down to Bondi, we had lunch, and then we went for a surf, or some groups went for a surf, some went for a swim at the beach swimming pool, and some actually participated on beach sports, and then they were on a rotation. The whole program was based on research from the University of Illinois, and the research basically suggested that the high level of fitness and the increased participation in physical activity in any mode, so anyone who couldn't jog down to the beach could walk down to the beach or walk. It was around about 3 to 4 kilometres. Basically, this research from the University of Illinois said that these sort of activities will definitely increase academic results. And I'll show you some data tracking that we did in regards to student performance. At the end of every session each week, students, this was their little booklet that they had, students had the activity, and then they reflected weekly on the different type of activity that they participated in. Once again, it was a great program, and definitely benefited the students in learning about personal health and well-being, but also in regards to keeping themselves active and looking after themselves, which we want to hopefully achieve so that when they finish school in year 12 and go to university, that there's not a drop-off, as there tends to be with the research reading, that, as I said, especially with girls, when they go to university, tend to drop off from participating, but also boys at that particular age as well. Okay, once again, this is just a few facts here, just basically supporting the evidence that I've been talking about in regards to physical activity. Sorry if I'm moving along too quickly. I've got so many things I'd just like to share with you, so many different slides. In Australia, we actually have the physical activity and exercise guidelines for Australians. Now, the area I looked at was obviously the 13 to 17 years. And there's some also some facts there about the adults. But as in Australia, the physical activity and exercise guidelines range from the 3-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds, all the way up to the pensioners. And what they've done is they have little brochures like this for the various age groups. And these particular brochures are provided to schools, which provide them to the children and to families. And once again, in health and PE lessons, they try to strive on making sure that physical activity in some form is presented on a daily basis for children during the school day. That's the front of the brochure, and here is the back of the brochure. As you'll see, and I'll show you in a moment, it also looks at sleep, and it advises people, or especially children in that 5 to 17 bracket, that it's advisable that they shouldn't actually be seated for too long during the school day, which is basically an impossibility for children who are at school, or nearly an impossibility, as I'll show you in a moment. This particular slide here just basically shows you once again the benefits of physical activity from a social, emotional, intellectual, and health perspective. Okay, so I'll let you just read each of those particular areas. But as I said, children who are participating in sports seem to be able to have a greater self-discipline. And one of the, especially if it's in structured school, competitive sport, because they need to manage their time properly, because if not only do they attend various numbers of training sessions for their activities during the week and then participate on weekends, so they have to be able to manage their schoolwork to a very good level as well. Now, in regards to what is suggested for children is basically they need to participate in at least 60 minutes of activity each day, or in this slide is suggested by the Australian guidelines, moderate to vigorous activity. Now, the thing that we need to remember, not only is when we look at secondary school students, but also as adults, that this does not have to be 60 minutes at one time. So if you think of yourself in the workplace and you may be sitting in front of a computer, having to do your work on a daily basis. So you may you may get up and go and get a coffee and come back to your desk. You may walk down to a cafe to grab some lunch and a coffee and then come back to work after lunch. You may go for a walk down the park. So basically, any time during the day when you get a break, you can accumulate that 60 minutes. So it can be shorter sessions as well. Now, the other thing is, the third point is saying that it should actually be 3 to 5 times per week, whereby you should be doing your 60 minutes a day. And for children, it's very, very important from a young age, because it not only does it develop muscle strength, but it also improves their bone density. Now, what type of activities are these? These moderate to vigorous. There's a list there that can be included in regards to the type of, or suggested types of activities that children could be doing. Muscle strength activities, that should also be part of the 60 minutes of a daily session. And there's some of the activities listed there in what children, but also adults can be participating in. From the moderate to vigorous, the light exercise, once again, still important for children, and also adults. So walking the dog, helping around the house, playing simple games like handball, and going to the friends and just to the park, and just kicking a football, or maybe doing some climbing up some rocks, etc. Anything like that, that light physical activity is also important. Now, limiting sitting time. Now, we're going to have a look at some examples that I'll provide you with schools. Just keeping an eye on the time here. Okay, let's move on. Now, those healthy guidelines look at sleep patterns as well. So you've got the activity during the day and the sleep. So children from 5 to 13 should get 9 to 11 hours of uninterrupted sleep, 14 to 17, 8 to 10 hours. Okay. And I guess we all know or should try and avoid screen time before we go to sleep. Professor Jo Salmon from one of the universities here in Melbourne, from Geelong, she has a very, very good quote. The more they burn, the better they learn, which is extremely true for very, very active kids. And here in Australia, during this particular research, they found that 70% of students' sedentary time is at school, sitting. And that's what we're going to talk about in just a moment, because, as I said, it's very difficult not to be seated during school. Why is it important to be moving and not sitting? Okay, so lessons can now be done standing, and I'll show you some stand-up desks. I'll show you some physio balls that students can be seated on for active learning as well. There's also another researcher from South Australia, Dr. Graham Dodd. Okay. He talks about the area of neuroscience. So basically, when you're active or when you're standing behind a stand-up desk doing your schoolwork, you're bearing weight. Now, when you're bearing weight on your body, your heart tends to be working a little bit harder or faster than if you were seated, sorry. And therefore, there's more oxygenated blood going to the brain, and then that obviously being transferred all around the body. So once again, standing up and learning is quite a positive mood. If you are interested in looking any further into physical activity and academic results, you'll find this particular slide or video on YouTube. It's by Pear Tree Education. So, as I said, if you're interested in looking at some further information about the brain boost and physical activity and its correlation to academic performance, this is an American presented video. Standing up lessons. The school I'm working with at the moment, we've introduced stand-up desks in our senior classrooms. We have 6 at the back of each of our classes, and students have the opportunity to be able to move to the back of the room to stand and continue with their lessons using their iPads and laptops if they wish. Very, very good for students who are hyperactive in class, students who have ADHD, students who keep interfering with the students that are next to them. And they can basically go up the back of the room and they can be stretching and walking around whilst also walking back to the stand-up desk to do their work without interfering and being seen by the students who are in front of them while the teacher's presenting. This is just a fact in regards to the brain performing better whilst it is standing. Okay, once again, the brain boost in regards to standing. And one of the things that I think you'll find if you'd like to trial it is that in the afternoon when you have lunch, you'll find that you're not as productive. You tend to get a little bit more tired and sleepy after you've eaten. That's a very good time to be using a stand-up desk. I've got one in my office and I tend to use it from midday through to the late afternoon when I'm working. And as I said, we tend to see students use them more in the afternoon periods than in the morning. Here's a few myths about the stand-up desks. Some teachers think that their classroom management becomes a little bit more difficult. That once again becomes more of an individual approach to how you structure your classroom and also the rapport you have with the children. Okay. Now, active learning in the classroom. I'll move through this quickly as well, just at the time. Okay, so active learning, as I said, it creates additional oxygenated blood through to the brain and then all around to the body. And therefore, it keeps you more alert and more aware. Point number 2. Okay. Therefore, the active learning tends to lead to better memory and learning. Okay, and I'll mention number 3 and number 4. Okay, so being active in the classroom also helps with your processing time and also your mood or mood swings in regards to what we call alertness or engagement within the classroom. Now, let me show you. So the kinesthetic classroom is a classroom that moves a lot, and therefore what a teacher can attempt to do is have different seating arrangements, have things, different types of chairs or seats, physio balls. I think I have a picture in one of these slides to show you, physio balls. A chair that does not have a back on it will mean that the child will need to use their abdominal muscles to support their posture, which is also a good thing in the secondary school. But many of us also, even as adults, will use that in the office. The other idea of active classrooms is it's completely collaborative. So I'll show you a classroom in a minute whereby children can actually come together into different groups. They can write on desks, they can write on a wall, they can write on the windows of the classroom with whiteboard markers. So they can be standing up and doing things in different groups and then even presenting back to the rest of the class. Then you can use something like Google Classroom. You can take pictures of different pieces of work around the classroom. You can upload them on, share it with the other students in the class, and then as a teacher, you can arrange for assessments or different activities that relate to what's just been happening in your class. So it can be a very busy room that's very engaging, with learning environments happening everywhere within the room, instead of a traditional classroom where you just sit at the chair and listen to the teacher or take notes off a whiteboard or copy something down. So once again, the active classroom needs to be engaging and it needs to keep changing. There's 2 or 3 slides there I'll show you. So this is a classroom that we're currently working on at the school I'm at. The front board is all a whiteboard, the front wall, I should say. So children can write on that. They can also write on their desktops. Where the blinds are down, they will go up and they can write on the glass. Okay. So we're also looking at putting chalkboard paint on the walls. So you'll have whiteboard walls to write on, chalkboard sections of walls to write on, the windows and the desks. Okay, this one here is, once again, there's a bit of a traditional or standard, it looks like an office space there. But once again, when classrooms are collaborative and their workstations are collaborative, they can actually move around into different parts of the room to make sure that they're standing, walking, talking, engaged in some form of learning, then responding and sharing, and then they can go back and be seated. So once again, the diagrams and the information I've just spoken about will help in regards to having an active classroom. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see this what we call physio ball or a Swiss ball that children can also be seated on. And that also assists, as I said, not only in posture, but you can actually, whilst you're doing your work, you can slowly be bouncing up and down on that. You also can transfer your weight from left to right. And every time that you are slowly doing these movements, your heart is obviously producing oxygenated blood going to the brain, and that's obviously then going around and keeping your brain awake and keeping you more alert. So once again, a different way of looking at the classroom. I'm just checking the chat here. Okay, sorry, I was just having, I just got, okay. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of brain breaks as well. So in regards to education, it is suggested through the research that children should have brain breaks throughout a lesson. Now, the research will also show that girls are more attentive than boys for a longer period of time. Girls can usually get through a 45 to 1 minute, 1 hour, lesson without too much trouble in regards to concentration. Boys' concentration span, usually after around about the 30-minute mark, it starts to wander. So what they're suggesting in education now is that you have a brain break. This is a sample of a particular brain break activity. And whilst you're listening to me talk, you can have a go at it if you wish. Once again, if I was to do a longer presentation, what I would do is I put brain breaks into the presentation and share the brain break or a movement break with the people in the conference to break it up. But as this is short, I obviously won't do that. But there's a brain break. Here's another brain break activity. You're supposed to, although it says yellow, you're supposed to say green, red, blue, etc. So you're supposed to look at the color or mention the color that the word is in. You've probably seen that one when you stare at it for quite a while. It's supposed to move around. This one here, 3D diagram, the green section at the front and the green section at the back is exactly the same. So basically, when you look at brain breaks, you might do only 2 or 3. They only last 20 to 30 seconds each. You only do it for about a minute to a minute and a half. And what it does is that you stop working whatever you're doing because the children are losing an interest. They may be finding it boring. You take them through a number of brain breaks, explaining each one to them. You get the conversation happening and they start thinking about what that particular brain break was about and why a particular diagram may have looked like it did. After you do 2 or 3, then you put them back on track to what you were doing to then finish your lesson. So if it's a 45 or 50-minute lesson, 30 minutes through, you might do 1 or 2, then you put them back into the lesson and continue for the next 10 or 15 minutes to finish your lesson. And what that does is it basically awakens the brain from the sleepiness or the boredom that it may have been in, depending on the type of lesson the child was in. And then it just makes them more alert to be able to finish that lesson. What I'd like to quickly share with you too is what we do at the school I'm at is we actually data track each individual student, their academic performance term by term. Now, we're a British curriculum school, so we have 3 terms in a year. And what we do is we have something that looks like this for every child in the school from year 7 to year 12. So we track their, once they enter school in year 7, all the way through to year 12 on a term by term basis. So the first one here is biology. So this particular sample, mid-year exam in year 10, they got 57. Then a final exam in year 10, they got 59. Then they did a mock, they got 45. This is in year 11 for their IGCSE. Then their grade was forecasted as 63 out of 100 for biology. And then they sat their final IGCSE exam at towards the end of year 11, and they got 75. So what we can also see there is there's added value to that particular student for the school. But we did every subject there. They've got chemistry and English first language and geography and ICT, mathematics, physics, accounting. So basically we do this. Now, what we also do is we link it to this. So we have the academic performance, and then we have a personal fitness profile that the children do every term in term 1, 2, and 3. So the first 2 lessons for their PE classes, they participate in this fitness testing. So they look at the beep test, an agility, run, a 40-meter sprint. They do push-ups, sit-ups, a wall toss test for coordination, sit and reach for flexibility, a standing long jump for leg strength, and then their height. And then the 12-minute run is for the cardiovascular assessment. So we also track their performance every term in each of the year groups, and we relate that back to this academic data. And what we've found is that this particular fitness profiling and the report that goes home to their parents has been very well accepted. And they too now are starting to learn about the link between the children keeping fit, not only at school, but at home and on weekends, and participating in sport, and also during holiday periods, because it will continually add value to their child's academic performance. The other thing we've done is we also, we're about to look at partnering Komodo, which is a New Zealand-based company on student wellbeing. So as a school, what we do is when we are tracking academic performance and we have the fitness testing profile, we're now also looking at student happiness at school, because student wellbeing obviously is also linked to physical activity. So we're looking at the student wellbeing, their happiness at school, their happiness in class. We also have day and boarding. So how happy are they in the boarding facilities? How happy are they with each of the lessons and their teachers? What are they happy with the types of activities, the learning beyond the classroom activities that the school also offers that particular child? And this particular wellbeing, we've put together a survey. Now we survey the children every 2 weeks, and we get feedback on their happiness or possibly unhappiness at school. We look at the year groups and we look at individuals. And when it comes up red from a particular individual perspective, there's an issue there that our head of pastoral care and wellbeing addresses with the year coordinator, and sometimes obviously with a parent as well. So in regards to looking at this brain boost, looking at physical activity and academic performance, as a school now, we're looking at the data that we're tracking term by term for every child in the secondary school. We link that back to the personal fitness profile that I showed you, and now we're linking it also to a student's wellbeing, in particularly their happiness at school, because a happy child leads to happy parents, which leads to positive student results. So they all sort of mix in together. And these are just a few apps that you can download on a tablet that teachers can look at. But there are many different types of apps for physical activity in the iStores, that's for sure. There's just some references that I used from around the world, but predominantly from Australia and America. And now I've probably gone over time. Sorry, I had to rush through really quickly. I'm not sure if you've got any questions or answers, or any questions you might like answered. I'll stop sharing there and I'll jump back on here. Okay, I'm back.
Thank you for your talk, Mr. Cassarchis. If anybody has any question for Cassarchis, you can go ahead. Okay, I have a question for you, Mr. Cassarchis, from Christine, one of our audience. And
Sure.
she's saying, while sports are imperative to develop better cognitive skills, how do you deal with introvert kids who are reluctant in participating in any sports?
Okay, that's actually a good question. I can give you an example of what we did with the fitness testing for that Cool Runnings program at Emmanuel School. What happened was that there were a couple of larger girls who didn't like physical activity. So what we did is when we did the fitness testing, we altered the actual test to be able to fit the student so that they would be happier to participate. So instead of doing a beep test, for example, which is the endurance test over 20 meters, we changed it to 10 meters. And she didn't have to run all the time, she could walk. And then she would like to do it with her friends. So she did it with her friends, and we also put some music on for them as well. And we had two setups. There was one set up inside and one set up outside, so that also the student didn't feel like everyone was watching her. So basically, like anything to do in a classroom, actually, if you you don't need to change the child, you need to change the environment. And that's what we need to do as educators, because you can't always keep blaming the children, oh, they don't want to do this, they don't like doing this, etc., etc., etc. So what you do is you change your environment to suit the individual child or children, depending on the group, so they're actually enjoying themselves more. So that's so basically any form of physical activity, the structure and the environment needs to change completely so that the child feels more comfortable in participating. But once again, it's not going to work for everyone. As I said, there will be children who just don't like participating in physical activity, and you have to try a number of different strategies, just like if you're an English teacher or a maths teacher. You don't just say, okay, well, don't worry about learning, the mathematics syllabus. You somehow still have to teach it. So it's a skill that a teacher has. And I'll just go back to the most important thing is the teacher having a positive rapport with the students. Very key. Connect with the children, they will do anything for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Cassarchis, for talking on a very important topic where the physical activity plays a very vital role for brain development, especially children. And on that note, I thank, on behalf of Star Conferences, I thank you for being a part of today's International Forum on Mental Health and Women's Wellbeing. Let's have a round of applause for Mr. Cassarchis.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.